Hello and welcome to the MYBcast, a podcast and video series devoted to exploring alternatives for self-care through somatic touch therapies of all sorts. We're fascinated with the mind-body connection, and so are the people we talk with. Today, we're continuing our series, Portraits of the Pioneers. Portraits offers an in-depth look at those who have been actively involved in the exploration, development, and practice of somatic touch therapies since their early inception. I'm Anna Marie Bowers, and I'm here with my co-host, Richard Mack, and our guest, Linda Garofallou. Richard?
Well, thank you, Anna Marie, and welcome back, Linda. So, for episode 3, I want to talk about your latest project, and that is a book that you just recently released called An At-Home Guide to Children's Sensory and Behavioral Problems, Qigong Sensory Treatment for Parents and Clinicians. So, that book is amazing. I want you to take the floor and tell us about what brought this book together and what are you doing with it?
Thank you, Richard, very much. The project with the book was a labor of love. I can't imagine any other request to write. Nobody would have gotten me to write a book except my dear mentor, Dr. Louisa Silva. It was a bittersweet project because the reason she asked for my help is that she was at the end of her life. And this was the last project she wanted to leave for the earth and for children and families. She was this compassionately dedicated physician. She was an MD, she was a Chinese medicine doctor, and she was a doctor of public health. So she had this blending of wonderful perspectives that brought truly, I think, a groundbreaking perspective to how to work with children with autism. She had a dear friend, and this was, the child is grown now, that had severe autism. And Louisa knew that there wasn't anything in modern medicine, Western medicine, to really address the issues that her friend's child was having. So Louisa, with her mentor in traditional Chinese medicine, who was also an Italian pediatrician, really searched through the Chinese literature to come up with an understanding of autism from a very different perspective than the Western perspective. So the Eastern perspective, so in autism in the Western perspective is looked at as very much a problem of the central nervous system and the brain. Louisa's perspective from Chinese medicine came that it's at the periphery. It's the nerves in the skin create a whole picture along with the brain and the central nervous system, and that you have to look at the whole nervous system. You must look at the whole child to understand. And from Chinese medicine, the touch was the pathway that would open what she called the sensory doors. So she really came with the understanding that it was the sensory dysregulations at the very basis of the brainstem, where all of those self-regulatory mechanisms are, that were dysregulated. She did 16 years of research with her protocol that she developed for children that showed this. And I'm only pausing because I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, but I'm going to just step back one moment and say that from that understanding, she knew that it was touch that was the basis to creating the pathways to renewed development for children, to opening the sensory doors, and if she could normalize those touch dysregulations, that is what could open the sensory doors to all more healthy development up the chain of developmental process. For her, it started with self-regulation. that you had to normalize touch so that children could meet those early self-regulatory milestones. Now, everybody in a pediatrician's office understands those milestones of, sitting crawling, sitting, walking, those. This is a very different set of milestones that she put together that come from those self-regulatory mechanisms in the brain. And if we have a moment, we'll go into those and why that's so important. And I'll just briefly encapsulate that, is our understanding up until Stephen Porges and his more complex view with the polyvagal theory, we understood the nervous system as being parasympathetic and sympathetic. And we had flight, fight, and freeze, and those were our survival mechanisms. And then Stephen Porges, with his incredible work, came in with this more nuanced and complex view of how we really have the capacity to modulate that fight, flight, freeze response through working with our higher order functions to help modulate that fight, flight, freeze, and how it was the touch, heart, brain connection that helped us make those regulatory steps and strengthen our capacity for regulation. The most recent neuroscience, and the course that I'm just finishing with Stuart Shanker, is about those primitive emotional circuits in the brain, which completely expands on our understanding of our survival mechanisms. And from the research of Jaak Panksepp, we now understand that there are 7 very closely regulated primitive emotional circuits in our brainstem. They're all packed in this teeny tiny area. So when one starts vibrating, it often sets off many of them. But we have seeking, rage, fear, panic, grief that happens from loss, play, and lust, I think, are the 7. I think I got those. But these are the basis of our survival mechanisms. And they work both when they're in homeostasis. They allow us this expansive drive into creativity and to finding those higher order capacities that we can access all of our capacities throughout the brain. But when those primitive emotional circuits are triggered for our survival, it's all under the radar. We don't even know they're being triggered. They get triggered. They immediately produce a cascade of all of those stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, and it floods the body. And it's below our conscious radar because it's all happening in the brainstem. So in the same way, we have the capacity to find that modulating from our brain. But what happens is when they're triggered, they shut down our high order capacities. So we have to work with them. The beauty of Louisa's protocol is that it directly targets that self-regulatory mechanism in the brainstem. She developed this very simple protocol based on acupuncture. And it takes parents about 15 minutes daily to do the protocol. It's almost like a Morse code. There's a padding movement, which is done with a faster, quicker movement, which kind of opens up where there needs to be circulation. It brings circulation in. It will help to open up roadblocks, especially those that sit at the brain stem. And then there's a deeper pressing movement. And parents learn to use those, and they follow. It goes from head to toe, and it follows the points and the channels of acupuncture and really opens up the body, opens up the sensory capacities, normalizes touch dysregulations so that children can get back to a healthier developmental trajectory. That those previous dysregulations had kind of shut down their capacity to move out of that dysregulated space. So it takes about 15 minutes. The patting and the pressing is that sensory information that goes so immediately from the skin to the brainstem and downregulates the stress response, downregulates that hyperactive sense. Not immediately. It's a step-by-step process that parents do day in and day out. And when parents begin, I always caution them. I say, it's not an overnight cure. This is something that you do on a daily basis. And Louisa did 16 years of university-based research with this simple protocol and showed that the parents who were able to maintain that rhythmical repetition and the routinization of that on a daily basis at home really had the most benefits. And kids make tremendous improvements with it. The first thing often I see is that when we start to clear out the tensions and the blocks that are held at the base of the occiput, is that kids start to sleep better. Because all of that energy from the perspective of Chinese medicine, all that energy gets stuck in the head and it's not flowing down. And what we're doing is we're opening that up. We're opening up the sense of touch, and we go right down the bladder meridian and right down to the heels. And we open all of those meridians on the back, which opens up the sense, because most kids don't feel their backs. They don't have any sensation back there. And you have to be able to feel, you have to have a sense of your body to have a sense of yourself. And we must have a sense of ourselves before we can have a sense of others. So restoring that sense of touch literally becomes the foundation of our social connections, the foundations of our capacity to be in a regulated state, and the foundations of our capacity to have empathy, to feel, to know ourselves as an individual, to have a sense of ourselves with agency, and that we have an agency in the world, and that through that felt sense that the parent gives the child of being seen. And I think that's where that agency comes from. And once we have that, that's all we need. We immediately know how to make those social connections, because that opens up our capacity for eye contact. It opens up the capacity for all of those things that Stephen Poore just talked about. So to make that prototypical social response that a baby makes at birth, when the mother touches the baby's face, the baby turns, she downregulates the nervous system. The baby can turn, make eye contact. So much is happening in that moment because the muscles turn, the vagal nerve relaxes, the heart slows, the digestion opens, the eyes are able to connect in a calm and quiet way. The ears are tuned to the mother's voice. They can hear human voices. When we're under stress, what Poore just showed is that those little tiny muscles in the inner ear literally shut down. And we're not hearing, our nervous system and our ears are tuned to signs of threat, kind of those low guttural sounds. And we have to be in that parasympathetic, that relaxed state, so that we hear places. So many times parents have said to me, he's looking right at me. I know he hears me, but he refuses. And I say, no, he doesn't hear your voice. So it tunes the ears. There's so many things neurobiologically that is happening. And that touch releases that cascade of oxytocin, of endogenous opioids, of dopamine, of serotonin. All of those wonderful, we're bathed in those hormones for social connection. And it's where all learning begins. Everything, all of our higher order capacities happen from that moment. So
That's beautiful.
that's what QST is based upon. And Louisa believed the protocol was originally developed by her mentor for doctors to do in the doctor's office. And she said, no, 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 no. I need something to put in the hands of parents. We need to empower parents to do this connection, because this is about, first and foremost, relationship. It's about connection. It's about relationship. And children respond faster to their parents. They calm quicker. Parents understand this more. And so her whole, oh, my apologies. I too, Richard, thought I had turned mine down. So it was really meant for parents, and touch is the perfect pathway. We can go into the see tactile. There's literally the other than finding out about these primitive emotional circuits and how much they have to do with our capacity for regulation. We have one of the newest disciplines in neuroscience is what's called affective touch, where they've identified a whole new nervous system that is absolutely encoded just for coding that affective, pleasant touch that parents, that mothers and babies do all the time, that fathers and babies do all the time. We can go into that, but I'll pause and see if you have questions at this point.
No, that's the C-tectoral system that you talk about with me. That's fascinating. I just want to let people know, how can they receive your book? Where do they go to find your book?
If it's through Routledge Press, and I know they're having a sale right now. I will also send the link to it because I have an active link to Routledge Press, but it's just called Qigong Sensory Treatment. And if you it's QIGONG, Qigong Sensory Treatment, and it should pop up. What would also pop up is Louisa first wrote her books and first created the protocol for children with autism. That's the protocol that she did 16 years of university-based research for. She was just involved in the pilot program for what I teach, what we now teach through this new book. So this new book is for children who have similar sensory dysregulations and aren't necessarily on the autism spectrum. Or don't have that diagnosis, but there's a whole population of kids in this culture is made for dysregulation. So this is a protocol for those children, and the difference being it's almost the exact same protocol. It starts in a different way, because usually children who are verbal can make eye contact. And so we start with making eye contact, and we start with a deep relaxation, treat down the arms, as opposed with autism where they don't have a sense of their body yet, and we want to develop that body sense first. And so we start down the back, and that's a little safer. It doesn't trigger all those survival mechanisms of eye contact. But this is just this is the book for children who aren't on the autism, don't have an autism diagnosis, and but still are really struggling with those regulatory issues that most often get put under the umbrella of misbehaviors.
Yeah.
When indeed they're stress behaviors.
So I have a quick question. We use this word trigger in a lot of different ways in the bodywork field, in the somatic field, and there might be people out there who wonder, what the heck are you talking about? What does the trigger mean? It's a perception of threat, but neurologically, can you kind of add a little bit more depth to what do we mean when we're saying somebody gets triggered, or this triggers me, or something to that effect?
It's interesting that you say it, because I think it is a word that has gotten overused a lot now. And it can be. I mean, I use it so often and I hear it used so often, it just, you don't stop to think. But for somebody who is unfamiliar, I really appreciate appreciate, I tried, in writing the book, I tried not to use any jargon in any way.
Right.
And Louisa had said that. She said, I want somebody with a sixth grade education be able to read this
Understand,
book.
yes.
And that was her thing. And it is triggered, but I think, and I hope I'll take a stab at this. But it brings us back to those primitive emotional circuits, because this is where our nervous system is monitoring threats. We are constantly monitoring. We don't know it. This is all happening in the brainstem. This is all under our conscious awareness. And it's watching. And this can be an external threat, or it can be an internal threat. So if we need water, if we need air, if we need nutrients, those primitive emotional circuits, because they are survival mechanisms. They are going to drive us to get the things that we need to ensure that we survive. So, and the triggering part comes from when they pick up a threat, they immediately, they fire so quickly. Those neurons that sit in the brainstem fire so quickly, and they create a cascade of, again, of those neural hormones. And if it's threat, it's a cascade of all of the stress hormones, and they literally flood the body. And kids who are, already inclined to dysregulations and activated like that, those kids, for us and for somebody whose, nervous system is fairly well regulated, if that's possible in this day and age, those stress hormones will wash out, within minutes, an hour. For kids in hyperactive states, they don't wash out so quickly. They stay, and they have those reverberations. So triggering just means that we're activating those neurochemicals, neurotransmitters, endocrine transmitters in our bodies that are having an effect, whether we are aware of it or not. And we go back to Stuart Shanker, because part of his 5-step process is recognizing that we are feeling something, reframing, but a stress awareness. We have to be able to feel it, because there's so much in our culture that tells us dissociate, just shut down. We're so overwhelmed, we shut down, we don't feel anything. We're thinking, we're doing, we're thinking, we're doing. Rarely, it's hard. And we have to consciously say, I want to take a breath, get out of thinking and doing. I want to get into feeling and being. What am I feeling in my body? Where is that stress? What made that? Why? Why now? What happened? What just happened? And we start to make it a conscious process. And that's how we start to modulate. And in that world, they talk about the neuronal axis, and we have the primitive emotional circuits here, and we have our cognitive capacities at the top of the brain. And we can dive, the primitive emotional circuits are going to start quickening and shut down, and we don't get access, but we have the capacity to take back that and send messages back down. So there's a bi-directional flow. And the beauty of somatic touch therapy is that goes in and opens up that bi-directional communication.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah, I'm always curious from different people's perspective on things like that. And so I was really, really, really curious about that one in particular. Some words every now and then they kind of flag for me, and I'm like, I wonder how they think that is. So thank you.
And it's so important today, because it's very easy to get snagged into repeating something because it's in the it's in the ethos, and we just repeat it as if it's fact.
Right.
Not stopping to think. And what's coming out of the neuroscience around our primitive emotional circuits is how easy, how much money, how much thought, how much research goes into capturing our primitive emotional circuits and making us stay right there, and then manipulating them to get us to buy, to do, to go, to think, and to think we're using our free will. We have to stop and think, wait, does that make sense? Am I just repeating that because I've heard 12 people repeat this, and it's all, it's all the time. And that's how we get stuck. We get stuck in these maladaptive modes of regulating because we're manipulated out to do that. And there's a lot of money that's made.
Sure, rather than empowering to go within and find your sense of yourself, your sense of what you need, your sense of what you're feeling in the moment, and what would help you with that. Regulation is another one of those words, like self-regulating. Regulation is another word. To me, it kind of means you have a hard time transitioning from one activity to another, from one space to another, from one thought to another, from one feeling to another. And instead of just making a transition, there's like a disruption or a eruption. And so that's like the simplistic way I look at that word, deregulate, regulate.
Yeah, it is important. You said something there that I wanted to bounce off of, and now I've lost it. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Well, I would like to ask a question. What's your dream, Linda? Where do you see this world going? In a perfect world, I'm giving you the palette to create based upon what you've seen, what you've discovered, what you've learned with the work that you do. What is your blessings to the world at this point? What would you like to see happen?
Well, I think because I'm studying with Stuart Shanker and Susan Hopkins with, the neuroscience work right now of the great, what they call the gray brain, our brain, all of those survival mechanisms that are at work and for us in our behaviors all the time. And so my bigger dream, and where Stuart is taking this work, is that is not just to be regulated. Oh, I know, Anna Marie, thank you. What you said was, I'm also, the idea of self-regulation is such a misnomer that I don't even know how we got there, but we use it. There's no such thing as self-regulation. We are hardwired to find our regulation in connection with others. That's what we came into this world with.
To learn.
That is our innate capacity that gets really blocked, but that is where we're all working to get back to. So for Stuart, that is the point of all of this self-regulation, is that we can find that place first in ourselves, from which to be an agent of change, hopefully in the world, in whatever little way that we can do that, or big way that we can do that if we're lucky enough. And with the goal of finding a just civil society where everyone is treated like Dr. Brazelton said, every child is my child, and the well-being of every child is my responsibility. We're all responsible for this. We're all together. I think we came to be through this commercialization and the commercialized world we live in. It's become so individualized, and it's, we've gone from a we to a me. And I think this whole transition that we're in right now is getting back to the we. But the we is what it always was in tribes. They lived in the we-ness, not the individualness. And I think we've gone through this transition where we've taken it. I think you talk about the Kali Yuga. They're, in different traditions, everybody's talking has a different way of framing the moment we're in right now. But it is that, and I do believe it is a transformative moment of finding our way back to that civil society where we are responsible for each other and a part of a whole and an understanding of that. And to make that happen, we have to be in that regulated place. We have to have all of our primitive emotional, the beauty of the primitive emotional circuits is when they're in homeostatic balance, they are what drive us to connect, to find creativity, to find purpose, to find meaning. It's only when they're dysregulated and out of balance, by design, in many ways in our culture right now. But it's only when we can get them back into homeostatic balance that I believe they become the engine of our evolution. That drive is in us to create that world. So yes, and I think we each find it in our own way. We do with my own personal work. I have this dream of training an entire cohort of QST therapists throughout New Jersey. So that a colleague of mine in Maryland, it's one of the highest, it's the largest, it's the largest area in Maryland with the highest poverty, they have a huge population, high poverty, drugs, crime, all of those things. She did the research, got the funding, and QST is now a part of early intervention. So every family, regardless of economics or anything, are off. If they're in early intervention, they get home visits to learn Qigong sensory treatment if they choose. And it was Louisa's dream. She always wanted this as a community service. So I'm hoping to carry that dream into New Jersey, and my colleagues at the university share that dream, and we've had the Center for Autism at the university has a lot of grant funding through the state, and we even have the director of the state Department of Children and Family Services who has expressed interest in saying that as well. So that's the dream. That's a lot of pieces that must fall into place for that to happen. But we get back to where we started. You create an intention, you create a plan, and then you see what doors open and where you go.
Beautifully tied back to the beginning.
And I must have to be the one to bring the news that we were
I know.
the end of our session. Thank you so much, Linda, for joining us today, and looking forward for more as we continue to build this. Both Anna Marie and I are involved with the Foundation for SomaticTouch.org, a 501c3. We're looking for people to participate in creating the research that's necessary around this work so that it becomes part of the future. So,
Richard, may I just say, ending, thank you. It is such an honor to be part of this series. I'm so impressed with the work you're doing. I am, to be able to experience your work, Richard, that you do on the table, I feel so blessed with, but to also be part of this project is truly an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
All right, Anna Marie, you want to take us out?
Come back and see us again sometime. We'll have another few episodes soon.